I'm really nervous. I'm definitely more of a singer than a motivational speaker. I think I've watched about 10 Oprah Winfrey videos in the past few days, and I've been practicing. I've thought, oh, I'll stand up, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then I thought, actually, you know what, just go on and be yourself. So today I'm going to be talking about my life, and I'm touching on subjects that I've not ever spoke about. In fact, some of my closest friends don't know what I'm about to tell you, but I feel like it's really important because obviously in 2010, everybody's seen me catapulted into fame, and they've seen part of a journey that I allowed them to see. But what they didn't see or know about was the journey of how I got to that point and what I'd been through. And one of the reasons for that was because I'd asked for that to be hidden. So when you go on the shows like X Factor, you have to have a meeting with one of the PR people. And one of the things I said to them was, I listed all the things that I've been through in my life. And I said, but you won't use it. And she looked at me, her name was Anne-Marie, and I said, I do not want any of my history or my story to be used to gain in this competition. And so everyone thought that my sob story was that I was the single mum with 2 kids because I'd requested everything else to not be revealed to the public. And so I'm going to go into some of my childhood. Please excuse me if I get a bit emotional, by the way. I'll try and remain composed. So I'm one of 6 children, and I was raised by a schizophrenic. My mum wasn't well when I was a child, and so a lot of my childhood was chaotic. It was normal for me to live in different houses, whether it be my lovely auntie, whether it be a foster carer, whether it be my stepmum. I was always passed from pillar to post. I never really had any rooting. I never had anywhere I could call home, which really affected me later on in life. My mum, I have to say, is a very nice woman. When she's well, she was someone that taught me kindness, politeness. She taught me to never look down upon anyone unless you're helping them up. She was the type of lady that would give someone her last pound. She would leave herself with nothing to give to anyone. But as well as that, when she was unwell, she could be really, really nasty. And I found that really hard because often I would be the person that would get the sharp end of her tongue. As well as that, I didn't have a dad around. My dad abandoned me quite early on in childhood, and the only memories I've got of my dad being dropped off on his doorstep when my mum needed a break, and she'd literally just drop us off, knock on the door, and hope that he'd come down and grab us. And he'd come and get us, take us upstairs, and then he'd go out and leave us alone. So always a sense of chaos and no stability as a child. It gets worse, by the way, sorry, but the joy does come. Joy is coming. It sounds really like, oh God, love, you need a break. But I will get to the good part. I'm just listing the really bad stuff, and then I'll explain how I overcame it all. Wait a minute, I've actually written a list. There's that much of it. You know, I got so shocked as I was listening. I was like, God, I need a long holiday to the Bahamas. Why haven't I had a break? Right, I've covered pretty much, but no, I haven't covered all of it. Right, it gets worse. There's more. We haven't got time. I'm on a deadline. Anyway, so then obviously abandonment issues, displacement issues all over the place. And then I get into the teen years, and because I've never known stability, I go and try and seek stability in love, which is always the wrong thing to do, and it was for me. And so one of my very first relationships was with an abusive partner, and I didn't know at first when I got with him, because he seemed really lovely, that he had a drug addiction. And so it was very normal for me to have to come downstairs after he'd had a party and invited lots of people the night before. It was very normal for me to lay upstairs in bed and for him to bring women home to sleep with whilst I was upstairs in bed. My whole life, from childhood to my teens, has only ever really known abusive people and abandonment. So people would say, well, how did you get through that? How did you manage to not fall apart and end up going on the X Factor and doing so well? And one of the things that I always had, even from a really young age, is a sense that what was going on in my life was wrong. I knew it internally, even as a little girl, age 5, I knew this is not how life is supposed to be. And I had an ambition from really early on. I remember holding my mum's hand. We used to live in Woolton Village in Liverpool, and we were like the poor kids. And I remember holding my mum's hand and looking at a house and saying, Mummy, one day I'm going to buy you that house. You know, one day, don't worry, I'm going to make everything okay. I always felt like I had a sense of responsibility for my family and for my brothers and sisters, and that I was going to be the one that took my family out of poverty. And I absolutely made a promise that my children will never suffer what I've suffered. As a result of being in an abusive relationship, I ended up having to stay in a women's refuge. I literally slept where rats ran around my head. Literally, I'd be laying in bed and there'd be rats running around freely. I mean, it was just a devastating time. But I remember just thinking, no child of mine, and no grandchild of mine, and no great-grandchild of mine will ever, ever suffer what I've suffered. And so for the past 10 years, you know, it's been hard still, because I think once you've experienced trauma or you've been a victim of abuse, you carry that with you, because that little girl doesn't grow up because she hasn't dealt with all that mess. So she goes into the world and she's vulnerable to other bullies and other abusers. And so, to be honest, for the past 10 years, although I've done well on X Factor, I've still had to fight the same abuse. But I really believe it's because I hadn't dealt with that abuse. I'd never faced it. And now I feel at age 33, I'm ready to face it, and hence why I've came here to talk today. And one of the reasons as well for me talking today is I wanted to, hopefully, in speaking about my story, inspire someone who is suffering or who has suffered, and to tell them you can be whoever you want to be, and that your circumstances, what you've been through, they don't define you. Life is cruel, and it does really cruel and evil things to people, and it's very unfair. You know, a 7-year-old child like I was in a care home shouldn't have been abused. However, I did not allow that to be my story. When I stood on the X Factor, I sang. I wasn't, hi, I'm Rebecca, the abused woman. It was, no, I'm Rebecca, and I've got a voice. And so I feel like it's really important that no matter what life's dealt, you know, whatever card life has dealt you, don't allow it to define who you are. You've got to confront the pain that you've been through. You've got to face it, because if you don't face it, you don't heal. But equally, that is not who you are. It's just shaped you. Get strength from it and move on. To anyone that is an aspiring singer or aspires to be in the arts, one thing I will always say is always remain true to yourself. Always say no. Don't say yes to things just because it feels like you should or you're scared. Never make decisions out of fear. The biggest lesson I've learned, and the lesson that I'm most proud of in the last 2 years, is I no longer make decisions out of fear. And the minute I eliminated fear from my life, I started to gain true happiness. Thank you very much.